Hey, appreciate everybody coming. I know it's a little different spot. Hopefully found some place to park. But, first off, just talking about the facility, the Memorial Hermann Football Operations Center, outstanding. They've done an incredible job with this building. It's very player-friendly. We've tried to do it so that it would be a great facility for the student-athletes, academic center, the weight room, the athletic training room. Everything about it is really great for the student-athletes, and it's great for the coaches as well. So appreciate y'all coming. I'll open up for any questions.
Willie, just coming out of camp, what did you like? How did you feel where your team's at going into the opener?
You never know until you actually play the game, but I feel good about it. The NCAA is allowing you to do a lot more things than what you're allowed to do in the past. Talking about in February, March, April, May, June, July. So you got to be careful about overdoing it. Back in the old days, you didn't really have access to the players until camp began. So you had spring ball, then you had a big break until practice began, at least the places I coached at, until, you started in August with preseason camp. So, I feel good. We got legitimate competition. I've made that comment many times, a lot of different positions. We didn't have that at a lot of spots last season, so I'm excited about that. And I think it'll sort itself out in the next, the first 2-3 games will kind of sort itself out on who's playing and how much and, what times of the game and what can they do, what do they have difficulty doing. So that's a big part of my job as a head coach, making sure we're correcting those decisions.
Willie, how are you health-wise going into the first week?
Pretty good. We've got a couple guys that are banged up a little bit that may not be able to play week one. When do we send that out? 9 p.m. tonight. So that's another part of the new world of Division I athletics is we'll send out a health report. I think maybe the Big Ten was the only conference that did it last year, and I think the other Power 4 conferences are doing that this year as well. And it's kind of copycatting the NFL and how they do it. So we'll send that out this evening, and we staff meet at 4:00, and Andrew Crane, our athletic trainer, will kind of tell us who can go and who can't go, and where they're at, and how we list them, all those kind of things. But we're pretty healthy. It's one of the things I've tried to do these last 4 or 5 practices, back off, to make sure we get to the ball game in as good a shape as possible.
You have a freshman listed at Sam Chance Bryant. What can you tell us about him?
He just really is, football, his football IQ is really high. He does a good job of, taking what we do in the meeting room and then doing it out there on the practice field. And, and he's got, he's a really good athlete. He runs almost a 21 mile an hour, GPS. He's, about 260 pounds, played high-level high school football here in the state of Texas. So he's going to play for us a lot in the kicking game, and he's going to have an opportunity to play defensively as well.
Willie, did you have a message you sent the team into this week with, and how important do you think that is to sort of
just take advantage of every single second. That's you start getting up to the game, and guys sometimes lose their train of thought, and get mental reps and physical reps and combination of the two, and and you just we don't want to start peaking now, not 5 days ago. So that was the big deal, just taking advantage of every single second.
Will, we talked before in the off season leading up to this point, a lot of new faces in the program. Can you hit on the chemistry factor, and with so many new pieces, and now you've reached this point where it's go time?
Yeah,
they've had a lot of time together at this point.
Yes, they really have. Last night we had a what do we call that event last night? The Shasta Blast, is that what it is? And it's with all the student athletes in the whole department, and there's some kind of samurai wrestling deal going on, and our guys were over there, the whole team, just having a good old time doing it. I just went over and made sure that nobody got hurt during it. That'd be kind of foolish, wouldn't it? But I think they really get along well. We had more time to really vet these guys. When I first got here, I just didn't have time to vet much. I got here a little later than maybe some other coaches did, and we had to make quick decisions. And this time we were able to really, ask people that we knew on staffs, and might be high school coaches too. How this guy practices, how he is off the field, how important all those things are. And I think we really did a good job of getting a good group of people. You're able to do that with your freshman class. It's a little more difficult with the guys that you bring in from the portal, but I feel like we did an excellent job of that.
What's going on, Coach? Just how fired up are you for the game on Thursday?
Oh, I'm fired up for every game. So, it's I had to tell my guys, the main thing I try to do is a great job of the practice part of it. The game enthusiasm usually takes care of itself. You only guaranteed 12 of these opportunities, and most of my guys probably work 350 days a year on their craft of being a great football player. So you better put it all together for these 12 opportunities, and they all count one. None of them count a half, none of them count two. They all count one. So we want to, be ready to go when kickoff occurs at 7:03 on Thursday night.
Being a key position of interest this year, what have you seen out of transfer guys like Will James and Jordan Allen?
Been very impressed with them. We added some really good guys on the back end, and we needed to. We didn't do a great job of adding freshmen, last year in the secondary. And so we had to go out and get some guys, and some of them these guys have got multiple years, but all of them have got a bunch of experience. They played, Rook Brown has played a couple thousand snaps, over 1,000 snaps. You got, Blake Thompson and Will James and Zelmar Vetter, and I know I'm probably leaving out some guys. Jordan Allen's played a lot of snaps. So we brought in some veteran guys to compete with the guys that are already here. So that's exciting.
Coach, with your years at Sam Houston State, can you speak a little bit on why this game might be a little bit more special to you?
Oh, I've had a few of my Sam Houston friends call me and text me and tell me about how important this ball game is. It's like I didn't know, but Coach Randleman, my college coach and who I work for there at Sam Houston, was here at an event we had the other night. He mentioned that to me also. But, we just, it's I got a lot of respect for Coach Carthel and what they do over there at SFA. They got a great team coming back, and I know what a good league that is, because I was in that league for, a number of years when I was at Sam Houston. So, we want to play a great game, Thursday evening, 7:03 kick, and so that's the important part.
Hey, Coach, how do you feel about your special teams unit and also the two transfers that you brought in the kicking game?
Really excited about Coach Couch. Chris and I worked together at Georgia Southern, then we worked together at Tulane, and he got, he went over to Louisiana Lafayette and was a kicking game coordinator there, and also at Florida. So I've got a lot of familiarity with him. He does a lot of the same things that I've done for 30 years, but he's also added to it from his time away from me and our system. So it's exciting. We got 3 new coordinators, and there's going to be some new things that we're going to be doing, week 1 that we weren't doing last season. There will also be some similarities. I think Zach Yoakum, he was the kickoff guy. The whole time that he was for a year and a half, I guess, at Notre Dame. So he's got a lot of experience. And then Ethan Sanchez, really good kicker, 11 of 12 last year at Old Dominion. I think his one miss was from 50-plus yards. So, a couple good additions to our program. I'm also excited about Liam Doherty, having a full year under his belt. That was the first time he'd ever played football in his life, not college football, any football in his life. So he learned a lot from last season also.
Willie, going back to the competition part of it, on the offensive line, just the depth and the numbers that you have, four new starters, at least from the end of last year. Can you kind of tell us how that played out or what you saw that led to those decisions?
Yeah, we needed some guys. We felt last year that was not a position of strength for us, and we needed to get better on the offensive line. We got Demetrius Hunter, started all 12 ball games last year, returning at center. David Ndukwe, who played a lot for us at tackle last year. I think he started 8, 9, 10 games last season. So those two guys are the two experienced guys we bring back from last year. But also Larry Crawford. Larry was a redshirt, and he's really improved, and he's going to be in the mix this year. And then we brought 5 guys in who started Division I football games. And a lot of them a bunch of games. Matthew Wyckoff, I think, he started maybe 24 games in his career as an offensive lineman at both Texas A&M and also Cal. So, we got some competition. We're going to roll a bunch of those guys. Sometimes coaches are a little slow to, roll offensive linemen, but they'll do it every other position. But we do it, because we want to get those guys experience. And also we got a few guys that can play multiple positions. Wyckoff, Mackenzie Agnello, he's played center, he's played guard, he's played tackle before. So I'm excited to see those guys in action.
You have a couple of guys coming off of injuries from last year, whether it was at their old schools or this one, specifically at linebacker, Corey Platt. How did he come along in camp? And with Machado, is he still sort of working his way back?
No, he's full go. He's got no problems or issues, and same thing with Corey. He's really only played one football game in the last 2 years, so he's chomping at the bit too to get out there and play. And that's one of the things you got to do early in the season, I think, is you got to do a good job of rotating guys. And we've made the decision on who can play 10 plays in a row and who can only play maybe 3 plays in a row. At the effort that we want them to play at. A bunch of guys can play 20 plays in a row and might not be a very good effort. So, that's something we got to look at. Some of these guys that haven't played for a year or two.
Willie, what have you seen from Mari Thomas and Harvey and some of the new receivers, and how do you think that room's been elevated?
Well, I think it's great. We got Stephon Johnson, who's played a ton of football here at the University of Houston. Mekhi Muse played a bunch for us last season. Kobe Young, I'm excited about him. He got hurt, after week 2 last season. I think he's going to have an outstanding year. But both Amari and Harvey are going to add to that room without question. They both of them can run. Harvey's a taller target. They're different type receivers. Amari's a little bit more shifty type guy, similar to Mekhi in a lot of ways, and also has got some return game element as well. And then Harvey, is a guy that can really go and get after those 50-50 balls, go routes, back shoulders, just extending and going up and getting the ball. He did a bunch of that last year at his previous school, and he showed that to us, so far in camp.
Coach, I got here a little late. Just asking the question, where do you like your team going into Thursday's game, offensively, defensively, new quarterback? How do you feel about that whole situation?
I like where we're at. One of the things I talked to my coaches about yesterday is you got to really go over the simple things in great detail numerous times a year, because, you add a bunch of guys in January, incoming freshmen, some guys from the portal. Then you add some more guys in May. Then you may add a few guys in August when you report to camp. So you can't take for granted, that what you went over in spring football is going to stick with everybody. Because some of the guys, the first time they've heard it. So I like where we're at right now. I like our chemistry. The guys have done a good job of building relationships, and and we want to be a developmental team with the high school kids, and we want guys that are here year after year after year. We talk about recruit, retain, develop. You can't develop them if you don't retain them. So we're wanting to keep these guys so that we can make them the best football player they can possibly be. It's interesting. I was watching TV, I guess, Saturday night after we got home, and I had a bunch of guys that were playing in NFL preseason games with me at a few different places. And, those guys, we developed them. And that's what we want to do here at the University of Houston, too.
Hey, Coach, how are you?
Good.
We talk a lot about culture, and you have this history of turning programs around. I'm just kind of curious, what are your expectations for the team ahead of their game against SFA?
Well, obviously we have very, very high expectations, and it starts with this first game. I just, it's important to, put everything into. Season goals are great, but our number one goal is being successful on Thursday night. That's, I think sometimes guys look ahead too much. So that's my job as a head coach, is making sure that our guys understand there's still a lot of work to be done here these next couple of days. And I'll know a lot more about our ball club after Thursday night.
Coach, last year, penalties were kind of a big factor in terms of offensive ball movement. A lot of times penalties on special teams kill drives. Just what have you seen throughout camp? Have you seen like a better in terms of discipline and less penalties?
Yeah, I think that's a big deal in week one. Ball security is a big deal in week one, and penalties. We call them pre-snap, post-play penalties. They're the ones that you control. And we had difficulties. We first 6 games last year in kicking game, we were really, really bad with penalties. And I think the last 6 games we might have had 1 penalty in the kicking game. So we improved. Thought we got a little bit better offensively as well after the first 3, 4, 5 games. But you just really hurt yourself when you're putting yourself at 1st and 20 instead of 1st and 10. There's not a lot of good calls at 1st and 20. So we really emphasize it, but it takes the guys in that moment, and there's a lot of stuff going on, to be able to understand. I always talk about, see the call, hear the call, be the call, and get out there and understand exactly what you're doing. And a lot of that is changing snap counts, cadence, those kind of things to make it difficult on the defense as well. But you can't do that if you're not disciplined offensively. Same thing defensively. And then there's also some things that we're going over with new rules this year in football. One of the things we do at the end of every one of our team meetings is we go over situational football. We want to be situational masters, and we go through some things that occur in a ball game, rule interpretation that sometimes some of my coaches don't know. And we want to educate them as well, not just the players. So it's really important to play smart and penalty free. Those first few games, because that's not often the case across the country.
Just getting ready for SFA, are there any players that have stood out to you for them that you've seen on film? And also, have you noticed anything that they specifically do well?
They got a lot of veterans back. They run a lot of stuff defensively, and really do a good job of playing with effort. Offensively, a veteran quarterback. I think they do a good job of shifts and motions. And I also think kicking game wise, that first ball game, you got to look at the whole season. The total whole season is what they may do against you. The things we try to do is make sure we're doing things that our guys are capable of doing and executing in week one. Sometimes I think guys do too much, or coaches have a game plan. They keep tweaking it all the way up until the last minute. And, as I've told my coaches many times, SFA has not played a game, since last season, their last game against Abilene Christian. So that's it. What you got to work on what you want to do, and you ought to be really efficient at what you're doing, because you get a lot more time to work on it than you do the next week and the week after and the week after. But they're a very talented group, and we got to do a good job of coming out of the blocks fast and executing early. It's always important in any game, but particularly week one.
Willie, we're into a couple of seasons where the transfer portal has really been a big piece of things and how it factors. When you look at your week 1 depth chart and you see some of the names on it, is that sort of just what the portal can do moving forward from one season to the next, how you can go out and get guys and make some some wholesale changes and get some depth and improvement?
Yeah, that's it's a way to get your roster better. It's you look at it, you see where maybe you had some weaknesses. We talked about offensive line. We needed to add some quality, offensive line guys who can compete for a starting job, and we were able to do that. If we didn't have the portal, it would have been difficult. You had to look at grad transfers, and and it's tough for a high school guy to walk in and play at any position, much less offensive line. So, yeah, it can really help you if you do it the right way. We're hoping that in another year that we're doing that less and less. We want to be a developmental program. I'm very fired up about the 20 high school kids that we added to our program. I think every one of them got a chance to be a very good player here at the University of Houston.
Have you named captains, or are you going to do that more week to week again?
Yeah, we do that week to week. It's our slogan this year is Houston 2025. That's where in this day and age, every year is going to be a little bit different. And I hope we got a lot of continuity, but we're just worried about this team this year. And we've got some guys who have only been here for a few months that I think have shown great leadership. So we're kind of watching guys, and myself and my coaches will talk about this, prior to we'll talk about tomorrow at the end of our staff meeting, who we feel like has really done a good job of leading the way we want them to lead. It's the other thing I tell the guys all the time. We want you to lead the way that we want you to lead. And if I got to explain it to you, you don't know what I'm talking about. You're not going to be that guy. But we got a bunch of guys. We'll have a lot of competition to see who's going to be captains week 1. I also like to have all my upperclassmen be captains at least one time. I think it's a pretty neat thing to put on your resume that you were a team captain at the school you're at. If I was hiring somebody, I'd look at that and say, this guy's got potential to be a leader in my business or whatever I'm doing.
Willie, if I could go back and ask you about Dalton Marryman. He took an unusual route, including through Brenham. Yeah. But just a guy like that didn't have a lot of offers, kind of went to JUCO, and I think he went to Charlton as well, but to find his way to Power 4 football.
Yeah, he's, I think the big reason he's here is he wanted to come back home. It was a big deal for him. A lot of these guys are Houston guys, and they wanted to come back home and play football or come back to the state of Texas and play football. But, he's got a lot of, attributes that you look for with an offensive tackle. He's darn near 6'8", and when I say guys 6'7", in other sports they might call him 6'9", 6'10", something like that. I mean, we measure pro measurement, barefoot, V with our heels and our toes and toes up, and, the whole works, and so he's got great length. Very good movement for a tall guy, about 310 pounds, 315 pounds, and looks like he's slim almost, because of his height. And he's a smart football player. He's played a lot of football. I think he started 6 games last year at his previous school, and we're excited to see what he's going to do Thursday night also.
Particular plan on how you want to do use the running backs this week?
Yeah, it's kind of like what I talked about last year. Is it's kind of a we'll do it a little bit by committee, and we'll that'll sort itself out in a couple of weeks, and we're fortunate that we got some depth there, because that's a tough room, that's the most physical room that you got, because people are coming up and trying to get them to the ground every time they're carrying a football. So I'm very happy we got some depth, but we'll sort that out in the first few weeks. What I hope is one guy becomes the bell cow. And somebody, becomes that guy that, is going to carry the ball, 15, 20 times a game. That's what we want to see.
About the boots there, is that
Explain to me everything about the boots here. Public Boot Company.
They're house sponsor of the season opener.
It's outstanding. My wife got a pair of these boots here the other day. I don't know why she didn't get me a pair. I need to get a pair also, but really appreciate Republic Boot Company for sponsoring us. Thank you all very much. Anybody else? Thank you all.